Welcome to the Beyond Normal podcast. It's your host, Kenny Groom. I'm excited to have a conversation with everyone listening today, just me and you. Today, I'll be taking a step back to dive more into my background and the purpose behind me starting the Beyond Normal podcast. I'm going to start out, telling you all a little bit about my background. I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, with both my parents. I add that note about having both my parents because, I think that was one of the most impactful things in my life growing up. Both my parents from both ends, they both had 9 to 5, but they always, told me about having marketable skills, even from a young age, the age of 4, 5, 6, they were putting those values into me. And they specified, I got to leverage school to get there. And so at a young age, from a school perspective, I took to numbers, thinking of those math and those science courses, physics, things like that, and really just how those numbers could be used to measure just about anything in our day-to-day lives. In addition to that, I was the product of a education system in New Haven, Connecticut that really, promoted Black culture. I had teachers that looked like me. Majority of the classes that I was in, middle school, high school, my peers looked like me. And so in that, I believe that allowed us to have courses, around Africana studies, just studying different countries and dialects and just learning about, all the things that people like me have added throughout history to different societies. And I think that's something that has impacted me deeply. I ended up migrating my later teen years with my mom and my brother. My mom really wanted to use, this as kind of a new start for us in Raleigh, North Carolina, where her and her peers decided, that would be a good hub for us as a family. It was really supposed to be a fresh start. New Haven, Connecticut, Connecticut in general is just kind of expensive. It's colder there, so we wanted to get away from that snow a bit. Moving to the South was definitely a culture shock because the only other times I had been to the South to visit my family members in, say, North Carolina and Florida, it was just a visit, right? It was just there temporarily and not, being there, having that as my home, not really understanding each other initially because the different ways we say certain words or pronounce certain words, and me just being down here, it was an adjustment period. But I made it through that in my later teen years, later transitioned into UNC Charlotte, where I, ended up graduating with a degree in mathematics. Again, that focus on numbers, led me down to kind of the STEM path there. And so in earning my degree, in 2011, 2010 timeframe, I really did the same thing that a lot of my peers did. I applied for hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, trying to get my first gig in the market, being a, just wanting to wear that hat as an adult, being self-sufficient. And so I got my first gig. I ended up at a small consumer lending company in the auto space in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Spartanburg, South Carolina, if you guys aren't too familiar with it, that again was, that's in the deep, that's in the South, right? 2, 3 stoplight downtown, one of those towns. So for me, it was even a bigger culture shock moving from Connecticut to Raleigh. Raleigh's somewhat of a big city, but then moving to a city that's really embedded in the South. Again, like I said, a couple stoplights at the time when I was there, not much to do in terms of entertainment downtown. That was something that was a culture shock for me. I really just had to focus in and hone in on my craft in that job. And, me getting that role there, I focused on the data analytics piece in that consumer lending role there. So that was really what started me down this path. All right, taking the STEM background and then moving into, analytics, which at the time, early 2010s, that was really becoming somewhat of a hot topic. So really, that's what really started my kind of journey in the consumer lending space. And that's a space essentially I've been in, since 2011, really my entire career, post-graduation from UNC Charlotte. I've just been within that space exploring different industries. So like I said, I started out in auto, ended up going into somewhat of a revolving credit space. You think that every day the Visa and the MasterCards that you use, and even spent some time in the securitization space, which I think was really eye-opening because, the purchases that me and you make every day, whether it be the car, whether it be us buying a t-shirt, whether it be, us transacting with whatever businesses we are within our community. A lot of times those swipes of our card, right, they're essentially bundled up by some of these bigger banks that we know. No need to kind of highlight the big banks. I think we can all Google that. But yeah, just those big banks, right? They take those purchases that we make and they bundle them up. And, they could bundle them up all the way up to say, $1 billion, right? If not more. And pretty much sell that $1 billion worth of kind of asset in terms of stream of income. And they sell that for money today. With those purchases kind of being paid back over time. So really learning kind of the wing-to-wing process of Kenny as a consumer goes into a store, like I said, and makes a purchase, and then how the banks actually feed that ecosystem so they can ultimately facilitate as many of those swipes for Kenny and others within the space, within any industry. Right. So fascinating to see there. But one thing I did notice, and I have noticed within my time in this space, is that education in terms of financial literacy, a lot of times is lacking. I was blessed, I would say, to be able to have conversations with my family at a young age, with my parents, I pretty much had an army of aunts and uncles as well that were there to kind of, have some of those conversations with me. And a lot of times the conversations, ended up being, with me being in the credit space now, they were very beneficial for me because they told me, look, don't ever let, anybody mess up your credit. Like, don't ever, let anybody use your credit, things like that. And so I was told that from a young age, and those things just stuck with me. But I would say overall, just broader financial literacy in terms of, having an account with money in it, having savings accounts, having these different kind of investment vehicles. There's some opportunities there, and I'm glad there's some light being shined on, just some of the discrepancies that we're seeing in the way, different minority groups are lended to. But I feel like, this is my way of kind of giving back, right? With me being in that consumer lending space, making sure I can kind of get some nuggets when I have conversations with entrepreneurs, and they're thinking with that right mind frame. I want to make sure that I'm highlighting them so that they can inspire others. The other thing about, financial literacy and just, minorities in general, that I've seen in this kind of lending space is kind of, the idea of owning your business, owning assets that you can pass down to your, generations to come. And I feel like the idea of owning a business, that's something that's not easy. It's not for everybody, but those who are willing to grind it out and have that asset, they're gonna be the ones positioned, because they're going to have a crash course in financial literacy a lot of times, because we're not used to the assets, the educational assets that come along with financial literacy. Going to the bank, having those conversations, they can be difficult. But then ultimately, as you have more history, as you have more exposure to these different financial instruments that we have at our disposal, whether it be cash, savings accounts, investments in stocks and bonds, loans, you kind of learn through trial and error with a lot of these things. And, I can only, just reiterate, I commend all the business owners out there, the 5 business owners that I initially started Beyond Normal podcast with. They have really opened up some eyes, I believe, within their space, and then with my listeners as well, just in terms of all the things that go into being a business owner, wearing those different hats, and just really owning their financial independence, I would say, there. So, I want to dig a little bit into, that's my background, but what really kind of made me go out, jump out there and say I wanted to start this podcast. As the COVID situation started happening, kind of unfolding in front of all of our eyes, I just wanted to put some highlights on, financial security, and that's a goal for a lot of people, right? But they just don't know how to go out and earn that financial security, right, by having their own business, right? So I wanted to talk to business owners, talk to individuals who were living that day to day. I wanted to hear the good and the bad. And so that's why I really wanted to dive into that. In terms of existing businesses, though, I think this COVID situation has highlighted a couple things. And I got a couple stats here from a McKinsey report that just came out recently, just around the impact COVID-19 is having on minority business owners. So here's a stat here, in 2018 Small Business Credit Survey, the Brookings Institution found that large banks approved 60% of loans sought by white small business owners, 50% of those sought by Hispanic or Latinx small business owners, and just 29% of those sought by some Black small business owners. And so what we're seeing now is, that those are discouraging numbers. And when I see that, take myself out of it, I know when people I've spoken to who are interested in going into business for themselves and they go through that process and they have those numbers kind of pop out of the system at them, good data in, good data out. Essentially, the system isn't, allowing for that good data, those good outcomes, or those good outputs to really come to fruition right now. And so, that number right there just shows we have a lot of work on our hands. I commend the Hispanic Latinx small business community as well, because they somewhat had to go through this, I think, a little bit earlier than some of us in the Black community in terms of figuring out how to change the narrative, change the way businesses are lended to. They have a lot of, I know the Latinx community, they're big on having their own banks and having institutions in place. So I think that's something we can learn from. But I think the bigger picture is, that 60% number, 60% of loans sought by white small business owners. Those business owners are going to, in a lot of cases, big financial institutions. Again, we all know the financial institutions that are kind of the household names. You see the ATMs, you see their branches on pretty much every other corner in America. Conversations are starting to be had with those institutions as well. So excited to see what those institutions can do there as well. I want to read another stat here. The Federal Reserve, same report, the Federal Reserve banks reported that minority-owned small businesses were significantly more likely to show signs of limited financial health by factors such as profitability, credit scores, and propensity to use retained earnings as a primary funding source. These companies were approximately twice as likely to be classified at risk or distress than non-minority owned small businesses, right? So, there's a benchmark set right there. That particularly concerning issue, right, impacts a lot of businesses, right? Because the stat later on in that same kind of takeaway in this study says, the U.S. Federal Reserve also indicates that distressed companies are 3 times as likely as healthy businesses to close because of a 2-month revenue shock. And with this COVID-19, this could be 8 months, minimum for a lot of businesses, right? So that 2 months pretty much equates to a lot of businesses ultimately going away during this process, and that's what we're seeing. We've all seen the rise. I think unemployment, right, got up to 30, 40 million people, right? So those are big numbers, and this situation is impacting that. And the business owners that I've had conversations with through the first 5 episodes, they're really in the heart of it, and they don't necessarily know these numbers here that I've just reported out to you, but they feel some of those systemic challenges every single day as they're trying to navigate their business and stay open, right? Add value to their communities. I think about my first episode was Leslie's Laundry Care with Dominique. She is really bootstrapping a lot of it because she feels like she has to, and she's in a good spot now. But since she's a small business owner, Leslie's Laundry Care is about bringing your laundry services to your front door. there's no reason for people not to, really support her business by, right, buying those services. And so I think there needs to be somewhat of a deliberate effort by individuals within really all communities, because what I found is that, I myself, they're in the area, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, there are not a lot of Black-owned businesses in my immediate area, in my neighborhood. And so what I have to do sometimes is I have to, open up that Google and just find lists and different ways to support different businesses of people that don't necessarily look like me, right? So I myself, through this video, you guys can tell that I'm a Black male, but I'm all about supporting, Latinx businesses with founders and owners that are women. I think about Native American minorities as well, just different groups of people that don't look like me. It's very important that, they have that access to that American dream of owning something and keeping, that business open so that they can give back to their families and their communities as well. But it's got to be something, in a lot of cases for me, it's got to be deliberate, right? It can't just be me going to the big names that we all shop at every single day. It does take me going an extra couple miles just to get to some of these minority-owned businesses. And I just want to commend again the business owners. I bring this up. I keep bringing this up. The first 5 business owners that I had on my first 5 episodes. Go check that out. But they're really living it day to day. They're living these stats. They're living this hard situation, and they're navigating through this COVID-19. And on top of that, we have the racial injustice being spotlighted on George Floyd riots and Breonna Taylor. There's so many names out there that we could just, state the names for days. But these situations are really putting some stress on the idea of, being able to own a successful business and be a person of color. And so, with that being said, on the topic of the the combined impact of COVID-19 and the racial inequalities or racial justice that's being highlighted right now, really what I'm seeing is that, at first when we saw the George Floyd video, I think the initial response was that of anger, and something forceful needing to be done. But I think now the conversations have really transitioned into, how do we make things sustainable for as many people as possible in this country for as long as possible moving forward. And so with those conversations, I'm just excited. I've got a couple more business owners lined up to have conversations with, and I know there'll be many more reaching out. But, I'm excited to see the dialogue happening right now and just giving entrepreneurs, minorities, founders, owners of color a platform which is beyond normal, where they can release some of the great things that they're doing into the world, and then some of the roadblocks, the opportunities that they're looking for solutions to, because I think that'll spur even more businesses, that'll spur more solutions for the economy as a whole. So with those two big impacts, COVID and the racial inequalities, I feel like we're stepping up to the challenge as a country, and really across all generations. I'm seeing some great dialogue, and I hope to continue that with the Beyond Normal podcast. In closing, I just want to let everyone know that I appreciate all the support. It's all felt. If you listen to an episode, if you liked a tweet, if you liked a LinkedIn post, I appreciate those things there. If you want to listen to the podcast, it'll be available, or it is available on all major streaming platforms, that's Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, there's Stitch. There's probably a couple out there as well, other ones as well. But if there's any opportunity for me to add to another platform, let me know, and I'll get right on that there. In addition, check us out on YouTube as well now. So I'll be posting this video to YouTube, and then moving forward, we'll have some of that video to go along with the dialogue that you hear from me and the different business owners. I think that'll help during this time, during this, the pandemic that we're in right now. Everybody's on probably conference calls all day anyways for, work purposes. And that's just something that's probably going to be a part of our new normal moving forward. So I want to make sure that I include that video just to keep that face. I want you guys to connect this face here with the voice that you're hearing on the podcast episodes. In closing, like I said, I just want to say, I appreciate the support and looking forward to many, many, many more episodes with minority-owned business owners. If you have any business owners within your community, or if you are a business owner and you'd like to come on, just shoot me a note via LinkedIn. I can be found at Kenneth Groom on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Kenny_Groom. Just reach out. Want to have those conversations. They've been really beneficial for all parties as I've been having them so far. So I want to continue that. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Normal podcast. I can be reached by cell phone via call or text at 980-263-9921. I'm interested in connecting with other business owners across different industries and looking forward to the conversation.